The most shocking moments on paternity court.
Does this change your mind at all?
No.
Why?
He look like me, she look like me, my other sisters and brothers look like me, and we all look like our dad. He has no resemblance.
You are not.
I told her that was my baby,
Sit down.
I told her.
Sit down over there. Stand right where you're standing.
I told her, 100% positive.
This isn't the first time Miss Yarborough has come to paternity court. She proved that Credell Jones was her biological father, while Michael was her real brother. But now they're in for a shocker. To prove that Mr. Triplett is trying to steal their father's estate by pretending to be the son.
He claims that he's like 2 weeks older than me. As far as my life, I know my mother and father was always together from 1964 to 1974. We went on trips together. My father was there, my mother was there. I've never even heard of Mr. Triplett. My dad signed his name on my birth certificate, as well as my brother Irvin's.
The first thing Judge Lauren does is ask them all to show their birth certificates. Both Michael and Miss Yarborough have Credell Jones stated as father, but when it's time for Mr. Triplett to show his, guess what? It says blank where the father's name should be. How will Mr. Triplett defend himself?
You were told that you were his child.
Yes, I've only met him twice. The first memory of meeting him, I was maybe 8 or 9. He pulled up in a car and he kind of pat me on the head, handed me $100 and went up to talk with my mom, and I left. And then the other occasion was he came, but this time my relatives were there.
When Mr. Triplett speaks about the 2 times he met Credell, Judge Lauren asks him if he ever had a father-son conversation with him. When he says no, the entire audience starts murmuring. The judge starts asking Miss Yarborough some questions.
Did you ever hear that in addition to yourself, there were other children?
The only ones that I've heard of were Mr. Jones and his brother, and Kubi when I got here, but I've never heard of him. I don't know where he come from. We just been through this, and now here we are again.
Miss Yarborough says it's unbelievable that Mr. Triplett is doing all of this for the money. When she fought her case, it was because she wanted to reclaim her memories with her late father. She never wanted any royalties or his musical estate. Can Mr. Triplett find a solid excuse to refute her claims?
To me, we all look like our dad. To me, there's no resemblance there.
That picture there was shown to me. Everybody that I know always said that I look like him, so
Who's told you that over the years?
my family.
And so
And
after
yes,
witnessing their appearance in this courtroom previously, you felt it was important to get the answers you needed as well.
Right.
Judge Lauren agrees that seeing how famous Credell was, some people might take advantage of that situation. For rebuttal, Michael brought evidence showing how his father divided all his property among his children, and nowhere does it mention Mr. Triplett. As a result, the judge calls in an expert.
You had a couple of great stand-up singing groups during the 70s. Temptations, Four Tops, Shy Lights out of Chicago. Bunch of #1 songs on the R&B charts. With the amount of sampling that has been done throughout the years, the publishing has got to be well into the millions by now.
The most shocking discovery is when Judge Lauren reveals how it's been reported that Credell fathered more than 30 children. So it's completely possible that Mr. Triplett is his child. Eventually, they bring in the other brother, Irving Jones, to see what he's got to say about the dilemma.
Once I called Marshall, I told him who I was. He asked me, was Barbara my mother? I said, no, my mother's Ruby. And he said, oh, Ruby, I remember. Came back to his head, but that's the first time I heard the name Barbara. And I found out Barbara was his mother. That's why I believe it is a possibility.
I see.
Because Marshall connected the dots.
After hearing Irving's story, Michael remains stubborn that there's no way Mr. Triplett is their sibling, and he's basing it on the fact that there's no family resemblance between them. At least, Miss Yarborough feels a little sympathetic, but the only way to solve all the confusion is to finally open up the results.
Mr. Triplett, Ms. Yarborough, Mr. Irving Jones, and Mr. Michael Jones, you are related.
Oh, I apologize, bro.
It's all right.
What could be more shocking for a man than knowing a woman lied to him? Mr. Hudson was fooled into thinking that Miss Bridges' son was his son. After some snooping around and confessing, Mr. Hudson has learned a terrible truth.
I even signed the birth certificate on the day of the birth.
You did?
Yes, ma'am.
So you signed the birth certificate because on that day, you truly believe this child was yours?
Yes, Your Honor.
So you say she dropped a bomb on you?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about that. When did that happen?
It happened a little before his first birthday party.
Mr. Hudson confesses he was tricked into babying Miss Bridges' son. The first fight happened on their son's first birthday. Miss Bridges was astonished to discover Mr. Hudson had invited his ex-girlfriend to the party, but not her. To have revenge, she told him something unbelievable.
We had an argument, and that's when she came and she was telling me how I might not be the father and she had done these things. I paid no attention to them because I am the father. I'm supposed to be the father. I'm here.
He was cheating on me back then, so that's the reason why I did what I did. So yes, I say he might not be the father, but I know he's the father of Ja'Cory Hudson.
The entire audience is left speechless as these adults try to argue over how them cheating on each other was justified. But the worst part is, after dropping the shocking news that she slept with Mr. Davis, Miss Bridges admits that she stopped her boy from spending time with Mr. Hudson.
I have no way of getting in contact with him. I can't talk to him. I can't see him.
He knows my auntie number. I gave it to him plenty of times. You just making things up, just not to be in the baby's life.
So is it your inability to get in contact with the child really what's holding you back, or is it the fact that you don't truly know?
It's the fact that we don't know, Your Honor.
Now, Miss Bridges claims that the boy definitely is Mr. Hudson's. She says that it's the only possible window of conception, and even though she cheated on Mr. Hudson, it was after the pregnancy. And she only did that to make him jealous.
Even though you cheated, Ms. Bridges, you say, I did it.
Yes.
You still say Mr. Hudson is this child's biological
He's
father.
100% child's
And why do you know that for certain?
Because I just know, look at my baby, and he been there for us.
The only way to clear this up is to ask Mr. Davis questions too. When Judge Lauren asks him if he thinks he could be Ja'Cory's father, he says yes. That floors the entire audience. And now, everyone's wondering what makes Mr. Davis believe he's the father.
Me and Miss Bridges met. We hung out for a couple of months. We ended up having unprotected sex around about 3 times. I didn't know that she was pregnant at all until I looked on Facebook one day, like a year later, and I see a picture of her son. And immediately, I think her son looks like my nephew.
You won't believe that all this time, Miss Bridges has been leading on 2 men. Mr. Davis didn't want Ja'Cory to grow up not knowing his father's identity. But Miss Bridges raised the poor boy without any male figure in his life. Her aunt is asked to court to answer some questions.
She was honest with you and told you that it could be 2 different men?
That is correct, Your Honor. I have been in his life ever since. There's been games going back and forth of who's the father, who is not the father. Mr. Davis has stepped up. He's constantly calling me, wanting to be the father.
Well, even her aunt thinks this woman needs help. It's been 5 years, and poor Ja'Cory has no idea who his father could be. The way Miss Bridges has roped 2 men into this fiasco is just messy. Will the DNA results provide these gentlemen some relief?
You are not his father.
This courtroom is in shock. This is not what anyone expected today. Mr. Hudson, how do you feel right now?
Hurt, betrayed.
Buckle up for one of the most shocking cases ever. When Miss Sanders realized she got the wrong man to sign her son Caleb's birth certificate, she knew she had to repair her mistakes. Now she's accusing Mr. Brady of fathering her son. What does Mr. Brady himself say?
Why do you doubt this beautiful baby is yours?
The first thing is the green eyes. No one in my family has green eyes. May I show you, Your Honor? Starting with my grandparents. My grandma don't have green eyes. My granddaddy don't got green eyes. Me, I definitely don't have green eyes.
At first, the 2 of them start arguing over the colors of Caleb's eyes. Mr. Brady says no one in his family has green eyes, so it's impossible that the boy is his son. But the thing that makes Mr. Brady extremely reluctant is how Miss Sanders never told him about the boy. Instead, he found out through Facebook.
I come to the house, dudes coming and going all the time. Like, I left her house.
How you gonna tell me that dude's coming and going, but you
I left her house and the dude came through, the same dude who she was texting.
How you gonna get
came through while I was pulling off.
So you telling me that if you see somebody with your girlfriend, you ain't gonna get mad and try to fight?
You wasn't my girlfriend, you just, we was broken up.
Turns out that Mr. Brady doesn't have an issue being the father. His actual issue is with how Miss Sanders had multiple men visiting her house and how he's the only one shocked about being the possible father. The question is, were they ever in a serious relationship? Or were they only fooling with each other?
Have you asked ask Mr. Brady for any help? Did you say to him, sir?
At the beginning I did, but he's so nonchalant about everything. It's not even a point to even talk. We don't have any communication.
I initially tried to take care of
communication.
You did?
Yes, ma'am.
No, he has not.
When you say you initially tried, did you succeed? Take care of the child?
No.
Eventually, Miss Sanders reveals that the pregnancy wasn't an easy feat for her. The baby had some cyst in his brain, and the doctors thought it could be Down syndrome. Mr. Brady says he supported Miss Sanders in this tough time, but she shocks the entire audience when she says he's lying.
When I tried to take care of him and all that, she told me she didn't need my help. And plus, why would I take care of a baby that's not possibly mine or is mine with grief?
He never even cared. Only thing he cared about was some shoes. When I first told him that I was pregnant, I called Mr. Brady and I told him, I said, I'm pregnant. I want to let you know. He just sat on the phone.
The thing that really surprised Mr. Brady was how another man signed the birth certificate. That's more than enough proof that Miss Sanders is just sucking him into this mess so she can trap him in some paternity cycle. But when her ex signed the certificate, what happened?
I just didn't want my son to not have someone listed as his father on the birth certificate. It was just something that was inside me instead of just having it blank. And this man was gonna be in his life like he said he would. I just wanted him to know, even if this is not your biological father, he still wants to be your father.
But what about when she was texting him?
Miss Sanders uses the excuse that she didn't want her child's birth certificate to be blank, even if that meant the man signing the certificate wasn't Caleb's biological father. After this, Mr. Brady uncovers another shocking fact. It's about another man Miss Sanders had been sleeping with.
When she was texting the dude at work, my coworker.
I don't understand why he keeps saying his coworker when he never had a job. So what coworker is he talking about?
Your Honor, I've been working for 9 months consecutive.
9 months and my son 6 months and I was pregnant. You have to be pregnant for 9 months, right? And Caleb is 6 months. They don't add up.
But then Miss Sanders' mother comes into court to support her daughter. She's had enough of Mr. Brady avoiding responsibility of this child. But Mr. Brady won't step up until he knows for certain that Caleb shares his blood. Time for Jerome to take out the results.
It has been determined by this court, Mr. Brady, you are not.
I told her that wasn't my baby, Your Honor.
Sit down.
I told her.
Sit down over there. Stand right where you're standing.
I told her, Your Honor, 100% positive.
Miss Sanders, he said he was positive.
So who the
I don't
other
understand.
possibilities?
I really don't understand.
Mr. White and Miss Loving are in for one of the most shocking times of their lives. While Miss Loving is convinced that Mr. White is her daughter's father, Mr. White has strong evidence that this woman is just scheming against him for no reason.
You had a sexual relationship.
Yes, ma'am.
Going on dates,
Correct.
meeting his mom, calling
Correct.
his mom.
Correct.
You're calling my mom. I'm
Correct.
meeting your brothers. I took you to a
Correct.
family reunion,
Correct.
but I'm not your girlfriend.
Correct. That's still, we had an understanding,
what you
though.
call that.
There's still an
What is
understanding. What is it? But what did you call it, though? It wasn't no relationship.
Okay.
Once Mr. White found out about the pregnancy, he asked Miss Loving if he was the only possibility. Even though she promised him it couldn't be anyone else, Mr. White still doubted her. So, what's his reasoning for not believing her?
We already had a talk, you know, this supposed to been a one-time thing. Remember, we just started back talking when I doubled back, you know what I'm saying? We just started back talking.
This wasn't a one-time thing. Prior to that, we were still around each other.
Okay, we was around, but we hanging every day?
No, it wasn't every day,
took a
but we
break.
was.
We didn't see each other for a year and some
Okay,
change, correct?
you're right, but we was still in contact. We was still chilling.
But Miss Loving was really shocked when Mr. White came to the hospital when she was giving birth, and he brought a pregnancy test with him. Miss Loving found it offensive, but Mr. White claims all he wanted to know was if the baby really was his. After all, would any man take care of a baby that doesn't belong to him?
When you looked at the baby, did you feel like it was your
No,
child?
ma'am. She beautiful, though, but no, ma'am, I didn't.
Okay, and so then did you ever ask Miss Loving, I want to do this DNA test, I have it in the car?
I said, I got the DNA test in the car, you know what I'm saying? Y'all still want me to go get it? Miss Brenda was like, yeah, I ain't hear Tiana say nothing, so I repeated it. You feel what I'm saying? I was like, you still want me to go get the test? She said, no, bro. She
I said no.
That day, Mr. White left the hospital not knowing if Loyal was his daughter for sure. On top of that, Miss Loving never openly shared the identity of the other possible father. Adding more to the shock, the conception dates were all messed up too. So, her mother's going to come to her defense now.
Mr. White, very respectful young man. You know, I love him. He used to get on my daughter, you know, about the way she talked to me, and I just looked at him like he's a wonderful man. That's why I believe that Mr. White was my granddaughter's father.
All right.
But the most unbelievable thing that happened is how one clinic gave Miss Loving a conception date that matched with Mr. White. When she went to get checked by her regular gynecologist, they gave her a completely different date. So, with 2 men in the mix, how did Miss Loving handle the situation?
They then did the calculation
exactly.
and gave you a new conception date.
Yes, Your Honor.
And that conception date clearly pointed to a certain man?
Yes.
Which one?
Mr. Talbert.
So when you got the second conception date, you said it brought Mr. Talbot as a potential father, and yet you're saying today Mr. White is your child's father.
It's pretty hard for the audience to keep up with all these dates. With Miss Loving's story out of the way, Mr. White asks to have his mother brought in. She'll clear up why Mr. White is so reluctant to embrace Loyal as his daughter.
My son is very responsible. He's been worried, stressed about it. You know, he want to know. If this is his, we refuse to have ours out there, you know, without us doing anything for it. I mean, why refuse the test? If I know you my baby daddy, you better swab it, baby. I didn't swab it. If I have a problem, I have a problem with that.
With the mothers arguing with each other, it's becoming clear that the only way to settle this matter is to open up the results. Judge Lauren is confused by the mess created, but at least both Mr. White and Miss Loving want it resolved. Will the results help them?
It has been determined by this court. Loyal's biological father is Mr. Talbot. Congratulations, sir. Are you glad to know the truth?
I am.
Mr. White, your assertion was true.